Hey guys, this is the podcast Mind Your Language. My name is Vatania. I'm an English tutor and I'm this podcast host. And of course, I'm a little blogger on my social media. And this is the podcast about learning and teaching foreign languages, English in particular. And today's episode is in English because I have a special guest. His name is Tom. We've been friends for how many years? I'm not even sure. Tom is from Belfast, Northern Ireland, and I'm sure you're gonna enjoy this episode. We've talked about music because Tom is a musician, and we talked about languages and about history and how all people are interconnected. And of course, I always invite you to follow my social media, and I invite you to follow Tom's social media as well. All the links you can find in the description. Subscribe this channel or the podcast if you're listening to us on the podcast platforms. And don't forget to leave the comment, like the video or the podcast. It's very important. Your support is very necessary. And if you want to support this podcast, you can do that. The link is also in the description. And if you are a Russian-speaking student who is learning English, I also invite you to join my listening intensive, which is going to be extremely useful listening practice for 5 days. We're going to start September the 2nd. We're going to spend 5 marvelous days together. I'm going to give you really useful techniques on how to improve your listening skill and how to get what people are saying, even if you don't know a lot of words or if you are not a really confident English speaker. So please join. All the information is in the description. And now let's get started with the episode. Let's go. We are on air.
Ooh.
Yeah. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Went out for breakfast this morning. Lovely.
Okay. For those who don't know you, maybe you can just briefly introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm terrible at doing these sorts of things, but okay. My name is Tom. I have known Tanya for years now. I am from Northern Ireland. I'm from Belfast. And yeah, I mean, there's not really that much. I'm not an exciting person. Am I? I don't think so.
Come on. Well, I mean, define what is an exciting person.
I mean, it's normally someone who sort of runs about and does loads of stuff. I just kind of sit at home and do not a lot. I mean, occasionally I go out places and do stuff and travel places, but for the most part, I just sit around here.
Okay. Like randomly participate in some podcast recordings.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Just
they fail, sometimes they
yeah.
don't.
Oh, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe that
Yeah.
happened.
So we tried to do this Telegram stream, and unfortunately, the recording was just really bad.
I thought there was some really good stuff there as well. I did my usual just talk and talk and talk and talk, and there's bound to be something in there that was good, but no. You say it's nothing salvageable, no?
But not because of you, because of this Telegram thing, which I don't know, just blindly relying on. I thought that it's going to be okay. Maybe my internet was also not really good, but I think it's all Telegram.
Mm.
Yeah.
We'll blame it
Right.
on that. Yeah, blame it on
Don't rely
Telegram.
on this shit. Okay, it's good for texting and sending these videos, not for live streams, apparently.
Yeah,
Not for recording them, I
no.
guess. Yeah. So, but what do you do, Tom? Why don't you
Well,
tell us about your job or hobbies?
well, my job is boring, so I'll not tell you about my job. My job is just no one wants to hear about that. So I'll tell you about my hobbies instead. So in my spare time, I am a musician. I will write and record everything from home. I mean, you can kind of see if I
Yeah,
tilt it that way.
actually.
There's
What is it? What is it?
so that's just my recording setup there. I mean, there's all I really use is the computer and a little audio interface. Everything else is sort of done in the computer. So I like to think I get good results. I mean, I did the music for this podcast. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
that
Thank
was
you very much for that.
yeah, that was done on that by me. So and then I put out an album recently as well. 20-track album I've been working on for about a year. And yeah, I'm very happy with how it turned out. I mean, it's one of those things, whenever you do everything yourself, you kind of have to just make sure it's all right because over the years I've been making music myself now. I think maybe for about nearly 20 years I've been making music on my own, but I've been in bands and stuff before that as well. And whenever you make music on your own, the buck kind of stops with you. You can't blame anyone else if something
Mhm.
isn't right. And I have released things that I have been listening to afterwards, going, "Ah, I shouldn't have put that out. That wasn't ready." Whereas with this one now, I took my time. I took a full year to just get everything right, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. So,
Great. I mean, you can like endlessly try to perfectionate something, but it's like the sky's the limit. It's always not enough, especially for you as the creator. You think that, okay, I should have done this differently or something
ah,
else.
absolutely. There's a phrase I have no idea who it's attributed to, but it's like a little saying. It's like great art is never finished. It's just let go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I might even be paraphrasing that. I'm not even sure, but it's that whole thing where you could just sit and tweak it forever, and so
Yeah.
it's just best just going where you go out into the world.
Yeah.
Get away from me now. I'm done.
No, and thus you just attract new energy. Like,
I don't know. I mean, whenever you put something out, it's always nice to hear how people react to
mhm.
things that you make, particularly something that just sort of formed in your head and you end up making it, and then putting it out. And people, anyone who's heard it has been quite positive about it. And there's been a few people who were like, is that just you? Is there anyone else?" It's like, no, that's just all me. It's like, oh, you know.
Yeah. We're gonna leave the link in the description, so guys,
Sure.
check it out.
It's out on I think it's out on all streaming platforms now. I think it's out on Apple Music and Spotify and whatever. So
Mm-hmm. So, is it like that easy to make music? Okay, it's not that it's easy to make music, but I mean, everyone with a computer
mhm.
basically can become a musician these days and just start streaming their music on various platforms, or how does it work?
Yeah, I mean it's what I use to distribute music is a site that you pay for and they put it out everywhere. So if you're willing to pay, I think it's something like £15 a month here. Or sorry, not £15 a month, £15 a year, which
Hmm.
is nothing, you know. And I think it's really good, and so I would use that, put that out. But in terms of, it leads to the old question, doesn't it? Quantity over quality. If you democratize something to the point where literally anyone can do it, is it necessarily going to be the cream floats to the top, or is it going to be, who's more popular gets to the top? And it's something I've struggled with for a while in terms of, because it's really good being able to just have basically a recording studio for, you know, at your fingertips, cheap, that you can just walk in and any idea that falls out of your head, you're able to put in. But I feel that there are some people who probably shouldn't be making music who are making music, and there are people who are making a lot of money from making music who probably shouldn't be making a lot of money from
Well,
what they
it
put out.
happens. It happens everywhere. I mean, in
But
all
then
spheres.
again, it's a matter of opinion. Art is subjective. So I mean, what I find, derivative crap, other people think is brilliant. So who am I? Who am I to judge? A lot of my stuff, people listen to my stuff and go, "That's derivative crap. That sounds like this. He's clearly ripped off that part." That's just what musicians do.
Yeah, of course. It's all subjective and to each their own. Like there are so many
Exactly.
listeners on the earth. You'll
Hmm.
definitely find your audience.
Well, that's it, isn't it? There's I remember years and years ago when I first started home recording, and the stuff that I was putting out was terrible because I had no idea what I was doing. It was my first go at home recording, and I posted it on, I can't remember like MySpace or something, and it was just some guy from Chile. He messages me and goes, "I think your stuff's brilliant." I'm like, "Are you sure?" Are you sure?
That's
But
great.
but it but yeah, it's that thing of, someone on the other side of the world listened to this and it resonated with them, even though it was terrible and like terribly produced, but something struck a chord with them and they felt the need to say to me, I like your stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I always come back to that and I always remember that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm telling you about it now, what, nearly 20 years later?
I
You
mean,
know,
one person, like one phrase, one word can motivate you for for the long run, and you just
absolutely.
don't stop. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, and as well, it's just one of the I don't even know how I got round to getting the idea of making the album last year. It must have been something because a lot of the songs that I've done are well, it's probably about 50-50 actually. Some of them are older songs that I've reworked and remade and that I thought needed a better framing and needed better production, and so I remade them for this. So in that way, they were a lot easier because they were already written. Whereas the ones that I was writing, I did want to try and push myself a bit more with it.
Just you recalled this situation with this Chile guy, and I remember I saw some videos of Ed Sheeran in the beginning of his career, and he was just really bad. I mean,
I mean, that's everyone starts off bad, unless they're the Beatles. I think the Beatles started really strong.
mm,
I mean, even if you listen to their stuff, um, the really, really early stuff, it's so tight, it's so good. Even now, what, how many years later? Like nearly 50, 60 years later.
mm,
And it's still, the harmonies, the way the songs are constructed are just out of this world, another level. You're never gonna get something like that ever again, I think. You know?
that's why they are the Beatles.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. But I mean, it's
mm,
incredible to listen to, I think.
yeah. And is it like fair statement that Great Britain and England and London in particular are like this is it's like the heart of music making industry, and there are a lot of, I don't know, maybe companies or studios
Yeah. I mean,
where
I definitely fair to say that. I mean, everything in the UK is sort of centered around London anyway, so the creative arts is no exception to that. Now, saying that, if you think about some of the biggest bands they ever come out of the UK, Oasis are from Manchester, the Beatles are from Liverpool. One of my personal favorite. I wouldn't say they're the biggest, but Eurythmics, they're from Scotland. And but they've all had to make the migration down into London. They actually make it work. I think Abbey Road Studios is actually in London, isn't it?
which one?
Like, Abbey Road, the one that it's famous with the Beatles. I think it is in London.
Mm,
I think it is in London. So even they had to, come down from Liverpool. But that's again, that's just the nature of the UK. Everything is centered in London, and it's the same in Ireland as well. Like whenever you think of famous Irish bands like U2, Thin Lizzy, the Cranberries, U2 and Thin Lizzy were actually from Dublin, but the Cranberries were from Limerick, and they obviously had to make the pilgrimage to Dublin to make it work. And then again, with us being the smaller island, I think a lot of them ended up having to go over to London to make it really work, to make it global. So,
mm, okay. I'm not like a specialist in this kind of things, but as I see it, it's like you can just distribute your music through the platforms, and then one day, I don't know, a producer sees you and offers you to become a part of a team, I don't know, and just invest a lot of money in you. How does it
I
work these days?
I wish it was like that. I wish it was like that. You basically need to know someone who knows someone who knows someone to get anyone to even look at your stuff. I mean, there are certain things like in the UK, you can upload your music to the BBC, and the BBC can sort of decide if they want to play your music or not. I've had my stuff played on the BBC a couple of times, a couple of older things through our local radio, because the way it works in the UK, you have um with the BBC, they have regional hubs as well. So it's not just based out of London. Like Radio One is based out of London, but then you have BBC Radio Ulster over here. You have BBC Radio Scotland, BBC Radio Wales. So they have their own little hubs. And so a lot of the time, whenever I've uploaded music, it would be going to the Radio Ulster hub, and they would decide whether they want to play it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, really, if you want to make it a career, you kind of have to know someone, and you kind of need to be really good at networking and, for want of a better phrase, bullshitting. You have to be able to bullshit your way around things, because I'm not a very I'm a very honest person, and it can kind of get me into a bit of trouble sometimes. Because you have to pretend that you like certain things when you don't like certain things, and I can't do that.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah. So you always sacrifice with something, whether it's your honesty or like your time with someone who you don't really like, or it's the opportunity to get popular with someone's help, I guess.
exactly, yeah. I mean, we're kind of in a position over here in Northern Ireland specifically. Like, we throughout the years we have had a fantastic punk scene. We've had a lot of punk bands come up through here. One of the well-known ones is probably the Undertones. I don't know if people have heard of the Undertones. They had an amazing song called Teenage Kicks. And they get really big over here, and then they got really big in England. But because of the nature of punk, and it's no bullshit kind of attitude, it's kind of good and kind of comforting to know that I'm not the only one sort of, staying true to myself and staying true to my morals. I mean, we have a reputation of that here, so it's good that way. But if anyone wants to listen to my stuff and help throw me a couple of quid, that would be nice.
Yeah, yeah. So, but again, with the help of social media, it's kind of easier now to promote, to distribute your music to the mass.
Oh, it's never been easier. It's never been easier to find your audience, and it's never been easier to get people who have never met you before following you. There are predatory services, as there are with everything, who will say, "Oh, we'll play your stuff if you give us money. We'll pump your stuff if you give us money." And I find that very, yeah, because musicians are, they're normally, they're creative types who aren't really good with money and financial stuff, and they just want to be heard. And so they are one of the first ones to go, yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, this is all I have, but if you can get me an audience, that's great. And I feel it's very predatory. I don't like it. So anytime any of them ever message me, I just message them back in Irish, and they don't know what I'm saying. So that's always
Okay,
nice.
that's a good way to
Yeah.
get rid of the people.
Yeah, because if you're not familiar with the language, it just looks like jargon.
Mm,
It just looks very strange. But no,
yeah.
I mean, you are right in that way. Like, social media is fantastic for for, just getting people interested. Um, and it's very good for, there are some. One of the best ones I think is probably Instagram. Instagram is very good for promoting music. It used to be MySpace years ago. I'm talking back in the olden days.
Mhm.
Back in the olden days of the internet, MySpace was fantastic for it, and a lot of bands, who are big now started out on MySpace. Like Bring Me the Horizon is a band that started out on MySpace, and they got a following through MySpace, and now they're one of the biggest bands in the world. I think Ed Sheeran actually started on MySpace as well. I think like he was a busker first, and then, but I think he had a MySpace page that really boosted. Fall Out Boy or another one who started on MySpace, and made their fan base there. But it seems to be Instagram is the new one now.
What about
But
TikTok?
well, TikTok is. I mean, TikTok has its uses. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to discover a band on TikTok. I think a lot of people will use music that they're familiar with for their videos, and they'll use music that other people are familiar with in order to get people to watch their videos. Like TikTok is a weird one because you could use it to promote yourself, but people, I don't know, but people like what is familiar to them.
Yeah, but if you want to become familiar, you have to create this trend or like to go to the famous TikToker or
Yeah.
like create content creator who can make it possible so
Hmm.
that they create this viral content and then everyone uses this piece of music. And I know that some musicians they make some like there is I don't remember where I heard that they create a song and they plan that people will use like these parts of the song
Hmm.
to create particular trends, I don't know, dance trends or something else, so that they make the music suitable for TikTok
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah, that ties into what we were talking about in the beginning about how cream isn't necessarily rising to the top anymore. Where you're getting into a position where, I mean, it doesn't happen to me because I'm an artist, but there are people who are writing, with the intent of trying to get their music to go viral. They're not writing with, artistic intent, they're writing with viral intent. And so they're making it short, they're making it catchy, they're making sure that one of the things they're actually doing now, musicians and artists and producers, is they're putting the hook of the song, the chorus of the song, at the start, so that people will hear it immediately and they'll know, yeah, whether they want it or not.
Hmm.
And again, this is just basically because TikTok, the TikTokification of music. If it's not a 20-second clip and you can't use it in a 20-second clip, forget about it.
Yeah.
And again, this takes away from actually, songwriting craft, where again, something like the Beatles, as I was saying, isn't going to happen anymore because the Beatles took their time to get to the chorus. They took their time to actually construct a song. Um, but again, I'm just an old fogey now. I'm not down with the kids anymore.
Well, TikTok is not only for kids as well as Instagram. Like,
Have you
I
seen
mean,
some of the adults on TikTok? Jesus.
yeah. So, but yeah, so social media definitely affects all types of like art. I mean, dance as well. Because,
Hmm.
like now there are some dance studios that offer these TikTok groups, like TikTok dance groups or K-pop dance groups, which
Yeah.
like K-pop is also something taken from video clips. That's it. Like it's not a very hard choreography that you can hardly remember. So no.
Yeah. I mean, and again, that takes away from the artistry because, if it's a TikTok and if it's focused on TikTok, as with music, the bit that you're effectively, choreographing for that viral moment. You're not telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
You're not creating a narrative with the choreography,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
it kind of sucks. I think, you know, old man yells at cloud. It kind of sucks because, where does that take us down? That takes us down to the point where we're almost at now, where people are using, AI to write music or AI to create art, or pretty much down the road, AI to make videos. It's
Mm.
probably only a couple of years away. And I know we were discussing AI the other day, and I was like, don't worry about it, it'll be grand. Sure, sure, chide anyway. But I do sort of feel that people will, I say people, particularly companies, are going to be taking more shortcuts with the creative arts. And instead of actually paying artists for their work, are just going to, go to ChatGPT or Copilot and just type in what they need and take it from that. And that kind of sucks because you know, you're doing creative people out of what they deserve. And you've got me in my soapbox today, so gonna set my wee soapbox out. I feel that arts in general are losing their value. I feel like they're losing their value. If you think about something, maybe about 200 years ago, people would go and pay to see, a piece by Mozart in in a theater because it was the only place you could hear it because they hadn't even worked out recordings 200 years ago. And now, you just pull out your phone, Mozart, there it is. It loses its value because you're not, it's just there. And this is
Mm-hmm.
the double-edged sword because I love the fact that my entire music collection is in this. And I can just go to that and listen to whatever I want at any time. But as a musician, it hurts,
Yeah.
you know?
I see what you're talking about, but also just it's not like completely like clearly only my opinion. It's, I guess, like a mix of people's thoughts, people who I was listening to or reading their thoughts somewhere. I think that this AI thing, it just highlights the importance of becoming a really like good professional in all
Mhm.
spheres, in all industries. And if you cannot like go hand in hand with it, and you cannot just I don't know, get by and use it for your own advantage, you will lose, definitely.
I mean, there is that side of it as well. Um, but when it comes to companies, are they gonna pay a really good artist for a really good piece of music, or are they just gonna turn around to their social media department and go, "Here, Clive, type in something in the chat GPT there and see what you can bring up."
Yeah, depending on the purpose, like what it's for.
Usually advertising. I mean, the big thing about 15 years ago was about getting your music licensed for adverts. That was sort of where the big money was because people had stopped buying music, and music piracy was at an all-time high, and everyone was just downloading stuff from Pirate Bay. So the big thing, the big push for artists was to get your music licensed into adverts. Now, if that revenue stream is taken away by people making AI music, where does that leave artists? How are they gonna be able to make an income if, Spotify doesn't really pay you a lot? And I know this from experience, like Spotify, I think it's like 0.00 pence per stream.
Oh,
And now they've brought in a thing where for you to even get paid for a stream, you need to have at least 1,000 listens. You need at least 1,000 listeners. So Apple, now to Apple's credit, Apple Music pays you for every stream, as
mm.
far as I know. Um, but Spotify, no, Spotify's, for the biggest company, for the biggest well-known company, eh, it kind of it's a bit of a kick in the teeth as a musician. But
Mm.
again, it's not my my job. You know, it's something that I do for fun, for joy, for just to create. If I was a professional musician, I don't know what I'd be. What I'd be doing. You know, I'd probably be shitting myself about having to get a real job. You know, I say real
Or,
job.
I don't
I
know,
I, I
busting
but
your ass to get some attention from
mm,
people
yeah,
with money.
yeah, and I don't know. It just it doesn't fill me with confidence unless they bring in legislation about using certain songs. Because again, the whole thing with AI in in terms of creativity, AI is trained on things that are already there. So people are saying that AI created art is actually a form of plagiarism because it's trained on already existing pieces of art, be it music or, you know, artworks or whatever. And so there is that argument that it is technically plagiarism, but it's not.
Mm.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see. We'll see. I hope that it's not gonna take over like completely, and people will keep this like this desire to get this real stuff in
Mm,
real life, like go into the concert or to the art gallery, or I don't know.
yeah. Yeah, or
So,
even buying, you know, that's something that a lot of artists are doing now. Is they're releasing like special edition physical copies of things to try and
mm,
get people to buy physical versions of it. Taylor Swift released an album there in January and released I think 20 different versions of it. Um, 20 different vinyls, and of course with her fan base, it was, you know, all of
mm.
them all of them were bought
Get them
by
all. Get them all.
exactly. Man, I imagine having that fan base. That would be. You wouldn't have to worry about money ever again.
Yeah.
You just
But
release anything. You could release like a 30 track concept album based around the sound of silence and they'd buy it.
yeah. Or sounds like I'm eating, I'm drinking,
Yeah.
I'm pooping, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, daily life of Taylor Swift, just her eating a bowl of cereal for half an hour. Slowly. Yep, there you go. That'll
Oh,
be $15, please.
see, it boosts the creativity. Like,
Aye. Well,
they,
this comes back to, you know, this comes back to quantity over quality. Because the album that Taylor Swift released there in January, it was I think it was a 30 track album or something as well. So it was a hefty size. And apparently it did not go down well with critics. Obviously her fans ate it up because they're her fans, but critics were saying, you know, they expected a lot more from someone of her abilities.
hmm,
And they were sort of making the argument that it was maybe a whole load of B-sides that she had put together and recorded and put out because she knew that she could make a lot of money from it, basically.
mm-hmm,
So again, it's the quantity over quality argument. You know, would you rather have maybe an album of really, really good songs once every 3 years or an album of mediocre songs, a lot of them once a year?
mm. But also it makes me think now that like these huge stars, Taylor Swift, I don't know, Beyonce, other guys, and huge music companies, do you think they will let AI take over?
Well, there already kind of is an alternative market for AI music. There is, there's a, I don't even know what you would call him. He's a music YouTuber, but he's like an insider in the industry. He's called Rick Beato. He's based out of the United States, and he does some really, really good videos about how he feels the music industry is going. Now, he's already said that what will happen is that a lot of these music companies will set up their own streaming sites
Mm,
because that way they are guaranteed 100% of the revenue. So, say for example, Universal Records will set up their own Universal streaming, and you will only be able to listen to their artists on that streaming platform.
Mm.
Um, and then they will have AI versions of those artists as well. So they will own that aspect of it because you can just type in now into something AI version of whatever, you know, Taylor Swift, Taylor Swift song, and it'll bring you something that sounds like Taylor Swift in the style of Taylor Swift. And these companies are gonna have those as well. I think there's already a handful of them on Spotify,
Mm.
like Nirvana AI and things like that. So,
Okay.
Beatles
All
AI
right.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
All
So
right.
I
All right.
I don't think it'll take over, but I think it will be an alternative kind of parallel. I think once and what again this YouTuber said was that when these labels set up their own streaming sites, people will replace the artists that have gone away from the likes of Spotify with these AI artists.
Mm.
So you won't have to if you don't want to pay for another streaming service.
Mm-hmm. Well, possibly it would also make like this live music more exclusive, more expensive. If you
Exactly.
wanna, it's like back in time when it was only for people with money,
Hmm.
high social status.
And again, it's wonderful that anyone anywhere in the world can access any music. I think that's really, really good. But I do feel that artists need to be paid fairly for it. Um, and obviously that means maybe a higher price for streaming services, or I don't know. I don't know what else. Maybe we should all pivot back to physical copies of things again.
Mm. So this stuff that was very popular a while ago, this token, what it's called? Tell me, when they like put this copyright in one piece of like a picture and you can
Oh,
buy it.
oh, wow. What are they called? I know what you're talking about. The wee monkey pictures.
Oh, for example, there
Yeah.
are like
Oh,
there is
NFTs.
yeah, NFT.
NFTs.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
people buy NFT sneakers. But
here the thing is about those now. Apparently, they're all worthless because people invest like a bit like cryptocurrency. Like people invested in it without really knowing what the crack was with it, and then all of a sudden, no one's interested in buying them
yeah.
because no.
I mean, no one is talking about it for a while. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember a year ago, everyone was like, "Oh, NFT, NFT, you should buy NFT, you should create NFT."
Yeah. No.
Okay. No. Well, yeah.
No, I mean it's another one of those ones, isn't it? I mean, it was just a way for rich people to make more money,
Yeah.
you
But I
know.
remember someone got really wealthy after selling some pictures, like just unknown artist, unknown designer,
I
like no
think it was
name.
in the immediate sort of aftermath of all the hype. I think there were some people who made a lot of money,
Yeah.
trading in them. But it's like anything, there needs to be demand for it. And once people realized, here, why am I paying this amount of money for literally a URL?
Yeah. I mean, I
What's
start I thought this from the very beginning, like,
I know.
guys.
It was that moment of, so wait, you're telling me that this URL is like worth £1 million. Why?
Hmm. Yeah.
Why? What's the point?
Maybe maybe in 1,000 years and 100 years people will get into that like level of
I
metaverse.
mean, that would be something. I would love to travel forward maybe like 1,000 years so that they could look back on this period in time and go, Jesus, what was going on there? That was a bit mad, wasn't
Yeah. And say, okay, I'm gonna get home.
it?
It's the best time, it's the best life that I have.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
we look back at, things like the Roman Empire and go, wow, that was a really important time for civilization. They're gonna look back at the early 2000s and go, Jesus, what's going on there? It's a bit mad. They had the internet, but they didn't know how to use it right.
Actually, I wanted to also bring up the subject of lyrics and language in songs because,
Mm,
um, like on our Telegram failed stream, we talked about the simplification of the language.
mm,
And this is what actually quite often happens in lyrics if you look through them. I don't know, maybe it's only about pop music, maybe not. So, can you see this trend, or it's just it's always been there? This kind
I
of
mean,
grammar stuff, for example, he don't, or I don't know where together. I don't do nothing. For example, things like
mm,
aren't really um, something like against the rules, you know?
yeah. Well, I mean, if you look, yeah, I think you could compare. You know, there are some very simple pop songs from the 1960s and 70s as well. Pop is always going to be pop, and pop needs to be accessible. Pop doesn't usually isn't challenging because it needs to be acceptable, because it needs to be, by its very definition, it needs to be popular. When you start going outside of pop, that's when you start finding more challenging lyrics. I feel personally, and they're the music, they're the lyrics that sort of have a little bit more introspectiveness to it. But whether they're grammatically correct or not, I mean, we discussed how on the field podcast how language evolves, and what was once grammatically incorrect has now evolved into, say, for example, African American vernacular, which is prevalent throughout, American rap music. And you wouldn't really, I mean, it's the phrasing that they've been brought up with. It's the phrasing that they're used to. And it's the phrasing that resonates with people in their community. And so you can't really say that it's poor grammar or basic or things like that whenever it's basically the language of their community. I mean, I don't know. I don't know whether I have put any sort of local colloquialisms or anything into my music, or into my lyrics. And if I have, no one's went, here, that's a wee bit too Belfast for a global audience. So I don't know. I mean, what it does have is, I feel like it maybe has a knock-on effect, especially if, again, I'm not necessarily going after rap music, but I feel that if you remember, I don't know whether when Eminem, the artist Eminem, got really really popular in like the late 90s, early 2000s, you had a lot of white middle class suburban kids adopting African American vernacular
Hmm.
in their um in their daily speech, because that was because Eminem was raised in, you know I don't want to say in poverty, because I don't feel it was in poverty necessarily, but it was in a community that was very um what's the word? My language isn't working today. It is my day off, so I'm allowed. But he grew up in a community that was quite deprived. That would be
Hmm.
the word. A community that was quite deprived. And in the United States, that is usually in the big cities where a lot of African Americans end up living as well. Just because that's how it is in America. It's a bit of a clusterfuck. Um, and so he was raised within that community and grew up in that community and adopted that way of, rapping ultimately with that kind of vernacular. And then it was adopted whenever he became popular by white middle class suburban kids. And that is when you sort of go, well, it's not really your way of speaking in your community, is it? You know, it's it's great that it's reached the global audience, but it's not for white middle class boys. You know, it was basically his way of speaking to his community and people within his community. And so I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't know whether it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's almost like an observation more
Hmm.
than anything else. Because I mean, you know, if anything, once if people had started talking like that, it could have shone a light potentially onto the deprivation in these communities. And then who knows, maybe 20 years ago, there was a kid from suburban United States who saw and listened to Eminem, resonated with him, and he grew up and became a politician and went, you know what? That has inspired me to fund these deprived areas. So you don't know. You don't know what happens.
Yeah, it would be great if it works
It,
this way.
it would be, oh, wouldn't the world be marvelous if it did?
Yeah. Just I want to show you the part of the lyrics and just get your thoughts on that. Maybe you know Sabrina Carpenter. She's an American singer. She's very young. Have you
Sh-
heard?
She has been a cause of a couple of arguments in this house
Ah, well, wait.
because,
She's dating the Irish guy.
yeah. Well, first of all, I didn't realize that until one of the videos popped up on it was YouTube or something. I was like, "Here, that's your man. That's your man from the thing. He's from here."
Okay, what about the arguments she caused?
So, I don't know. For me, the song "Espresso" sounds like "Fast Love" by George Michael.
Oh, okay.
It's almost
I should check.
almost identical in structure and in music, but not in her singing. Her singing is different, but everything else about it, I had been hearing the song for a few days, and I was just, that's "Fast Love" by George Michael.
Okay.
And so now, anytime it's on the radio, Luciana's singing along with the Sabrina Carpenter version, and I'm singing "Fast Love" by George Michael over it, even louder, and this leads to arguments.
Oh, okay, so your household arguments, I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it wonderful to have such basic arguments? No, song's
Of
wrong.
course. Yeah, actually, we talked with my students, we talked about this exact song today.
Mm.
And just I'll drop you this part of the lyrics. You see it, yeah? You can?
Yeah, I can see that.
So, just this way, she used these words and phrases as verbs. Dream came true it, and brand new it. I
Interesting.
Mountain Dew it for you. So, is it something that quite often happens in songs and people just use it, the language so freely in that way?
I think in modern pop music, probably. I mean, for the way I write, I try and write the way I read, if you know what I mean. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I would try and write, if I would try and keep it as grammatically sound as I could, unless it doesn't work. And then I would maybe mess about with it a bit and try and be a bit more creative with it. Um, and I feel that this is maybe what's happened here. They've just played around with the language,
Yeah.
to try and put across the point. Um, it's actually quite interesting. I mean, from an academic perspective, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I fucking hate the song, but it's from an academic perspective, it's really interesting because it comes along with the idea, like Google, how Google went from being a search engine to a verb.
Yeah, yeah. Or TikTok now, it's also like a
Yeah,
verb.
TikTok, it's become a verb,
It's
and it's English seems to have a really good habit of doing that, of taking a noun and verbing it,
and
you
here
know.
it's like a phrase, like a collocation, dream come true, and she just dream came true did.
Yeah. It's yeah, yeah, interesting. And again, not I'm not going to be critical Well, I mean, I've already said I hate the song, but I hate the song. But from an academic perspective, this is blowing my mind. I'm gonna
Mm.
go away and write stuff like this now.
Yes.
Yeah, just fast and loose with language. That's the way I'm gonna be from now on.
Yeah. But is it like, okay, if someone would play around with the language like that, say it's a not native speaker, how would you feel? Would you like, okay, not maybe you personally, but the average, uh, I don't know, Irish man? Like,
I don't think if it's packaged up in a catchy song, I don't think people care. You know, if
what
it's
about
something
like
that
the speech? If we are like talking, we have a conversation.
if it's in daily speech, I think it would maybe catch you off guard initially, and you would think, was that
Uh,
deliberate? Was that
uh,
deliberate or was that a mistake?
yeah.
You know, and then whenever it became clear, if it was deliberate, you'd be like, nice one. And if it was a mistake, you just go, oh well, no, that's not no, that's not how we do things. You know,
Uh-huh.
but I mean, I've said to you before, like Irish people in general, like up and down this island, Scottish people as well. We do play with language a lot, and especially in Ireland, you know, it's almost part of our culture that our version of English is a bit strange. You know, it's a bit weird compared to what you would hear over in England. I mean, I heard it was he's a podcaster, and I was listening to his podcast, and he said that he had an American friend over whenever he was a kid, and the phrasing he used was, "Oh, you'll go to the shop for me, will you?" And the American kid was like, "Are you ordering me to go to the shop?" Because he said, "You'll go to the shop for me," and it's like, no, that's just the way we speak. That's you'll go to the shop for me, will you? And apparently, now this could be a complete fabrication, but apparently this was whenever the English were teaching the Irish to speak English during the colonial period. They, the Irish deliberately were messing with the language so that whenever they were, say, an English guard or something was ordering them to do something, they could pretend that they didn't understand, or they could confuse the guard into letting them get on with their day. I thought, that's fantastic. If it's true, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
But again, yeah, like we play with the language all the time, you know.
Yeah. I mean, okay, what is the language that you can speak pretty well? Is it like Spanish or French?
It's probably Spanish now. It's definitely overtaken the French. My French is shocking now.
Okay.
And I had gotten so good at it. And it's just because I haven't used it. And I mean, I would hear Spanish every day now. You
Mm-hmm.
know, she would talk to her family and I would be able to pick out, but I mean, able to eavesdrop really well. But as with everything, it's having the confidence to actually speak, and then having the ability to recall quickly enough to hold a conversation. Because the
Mm-hmm.
words are all, and the even better one is sometimes when I'm speaking Spanish, my brain will reach for a word and it'll be a French word.
Okay. Okay.
So, and this has led me to believe that, right, okay, so the language center of the brain is just where everything goes. And it'll just
Yeah.
pick a random word out for you, and there you go.
I mean, being bilingual and it entails not only like two languages, it could be more, like three
Hmm.
languages, four languages, whatever. It's a really fascinating thing how your brain works and how you can actually mix the languages at the same time. And if you are both um, good at these languages, or I don't know, all
Mm.
people in the group, you can understand each other, but you will mix all of them together. Yeah, it's crazy.
And this is gonna segue us back into music again, and I'm gonna tell you about I think I discussed them briefly on Thursday, wasn't it? Our field podcast.
Nobody would know that that we
They
discussed.
do now. So there's a band from Belfast called Kneecap, and they are a rap group. and they rap in English and Irish. And yeah, that's that thing where they're able to just sort of switch seamlessly between Irish and English. And like the two languages have very little in common, very, very little in common. And to have that ability, particularly in a musical context and a rhythmic style of music like rap, to be able to just, switch seamlessly between the two, I think it's fantastic. And like normally I'm not really big into rap or R&B or anything like that, but for some reason, I don't know whether it's just because they're local lads or not. It really, I'm really proud of them because they're doing really well. Like they've got a film out now, that's being released globally, um, as well as releasing music, and people seem to be really vibing with it. And it's class. It's really class to see, because again, as I discussed with you last week, the Irish language was always seen as a bit of a stuffy academic kind of language. Outside of obviously the Gaeltacht, where it was a day to day language. And so to have it now being almost like the language of the inner city youth is fantastic to see. It's really, really cool to see.
Yeah, it's great. So they should make it viral somewhere so that people will just start learning, like, oh, I want to learn Irish.
Yeah. Oh, it would be brilliant to see, I would really love to see Irish being the language of this island. Now, obviously, we all have English anyway, but I'd love to see it be the language of the island because it was the language of the island, you know? Obviously, I don't want it to come at the detriment of us not having English, but I would like to see us on this island to have Irish as the primary language
Of course.
along with English, I think. I think it
Of
would be good.
course. I mean, I can understand, even though I'm not the person from like another, I don't know, indigenous people group, community, wherever, but I feel that it's really necessary and it's important to
Mm.
preserve the languages. So, as we also discussed, that which one died out?
Cornish?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just not
You
let this happen.
Yeah, because a culture is its language,
Yeah,
and a language is its culture. The two are inseparable. And if you lose one, if you lose the language, then what do you have as a culture? You know?
yeah, exactly. So, going back a little bit to your Spanish experience, Spanish
Mm.
language experience. So would you start playing with the words at the level where you are now, or you would rather keep it more conventional in terms of grammar or vocabulary?
Well, I mean, I'm a playful little chap, so I've always been ever since Luciana was teaching me how to speak Spanish. I've always been messing around with it. You know,
Mm,
I've we've a couple of inside jokes from the very, very beginning of me knowing some very, very basic words that we will still use between ourselves. That's another thing, actually, I would like to bring up, that couples and families have their own type of language as well. They have their own, they play about with language and have words for things that outside of the context of the family or the relationship just make no sense to anyone else. And this is one of those instances, except of course it's in a bilingual context, because I think it's a contraction of a word that she taught me that I now use as a positive affirmation.
mm,
So she'll ask me for something, and as a way of saying yes, I'll just say that contraction of the word.
okay,
it's
okay.
I'm trying to explain it. I can't explain it. We find it funny. No one else is gonna find it funny. You had to be there.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And if we go even out of like family context, it could be applied to all the communities and groups, and this is where the slang comes from, right?
Mm.
You just start playing with
I
the
mean,
language.
you know French, so you would have you heard of isn't it Verlan?
Yeah, Verlan.
Yeah.
Verlan.
Well, in Buenos Aires, they have something similar where
Hmm.
they mess about with the words as well, and they have their own, like Buenos Aires and Argentinian Spanish in general is quite removed from the Spanish you would hear elsewhere. They have their own words for
Hmm.
things. Um, a good example is actually Che Guevara. Che Guevara wasn't actually called Che.
Uh,
Che is an interjection in Argentinian Spanish. It's like hey.
mm.
Um, so that's an example of that. You know, they have their own way of saying words. But Verlan is, you know, that way
Crazy.
of speaking. You know, it's that way of messing with the words to make it so that authority figures and parents don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but it's crazy sometimes. It's like,
It's called lunfardo in Spanish. In
mm,
Argentina, it's called lunfardo. And it's because they had a lot of Italian immigrants, it's quite influenced by Italian as well. Um, because Argentina has a fascinating history about like immigration. You know, almost everyone there is white for one, and they're all of Southern European descent mostly. You know, they're either from Spain or Italy, like their family.
mm,
You know, almost all of them, I think, could be eligible for citizenship of one of those countries because a lot of the immigration happened in the early 20th century, which would mean their grandparents. So,
mm.
you know, that's
Now there are lots of Russians as well. You
lots
know,
of Russians. There
it
was a
was,
lot of Germans as well. So again, their cuisine is heavily influenced by immigration. They have a version of what's it called? Schnitzel, I think it is. It's like
mm,
breadcrumbed meat,
maybe.
and they call it milanesa. But it came with the um German and Austrian immigrants into Argentina. And Argentina has the fourth largest Irish community in the world.
Wow, how come?
Yeah. Well, again, I've mentioned before the Irish had a very long and storied history of just throwing themselves all over the world, mainly because of the weather as well as the colonialism. But a lot of ones were taken not taken, but they went to Argentina under the pretense that they would be livestock farming because that's something that we're really good at here. And so you would get I say a lot. There's a decent amount of ones would have like Irish surnames. We were driving through the countryside there, and there was a sign with an Irish tricolour that said something like O'Dillon, and it was a real estate company, but the rest of the thing was in Spanish. So
Wow.
I was just a bit like, fuck, am I?
I mean, for you, how incredible it is. Like you travel, like it's another side of the world. I mean,
Yeah, and they have a club called Hurling Club, right? And it's a rugby club. And I don't know whether I've mentioned to you before, but one of the national sport of Ireland is an indigenous sport called hurling. And it's basically like what happens if hockey and baseball had a baby
mm,
on
I
a
think,
pitch. It's amazing. You should all watch hurling. Everyone should watch hurling. It's amazing.
yeah.
But Hurling Club, which is a rugby club now, was originally started as a hurling club by Irish immigrants in
Mm.
Argentina, in Buenos Aires. It's one of those ones, and the more I pick at the scab, the more I see it. Their first general of their or sorry, their first admiral of their navy was from County Mayo in Ireland. So I mean, there's a real strong connection there. If only they could get direct flights. No direct flights.
Uh, yeah. Well, you should negotiate this. Like, guys, we have a lot in common. Let's do that.
Yeah, we're best mates. Sure, Che Guevara. Che Guevara Lynch. He was called Lynch. Lynch is an Irish surname.
Okay. You see?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, but it means that all people are closer to each other than they think they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean,
Dig
you
into
only
the history and you will find something.
hmm I mean, the book that I'm reading at the moment, I mentioned it again in the aborted podcast. Um, it's 32 words for field, and it's an examination of the Irish language and the connections between us, the land, etc. But Irish is also an Indo-European language, so there's a lot of connections between Irish and Sanskrit.
Wow.
One of the big ones that's pointed out is we have a river here down in County Meath called the Boyne River.
Mhm.
So this is a bit of a journey, but stay with me. So the Boyne River is named after a god, a goddess, who was the goddess of that river. She was Boin or Bovinda, which is apparently a cognate with Govinda in Hinduism. Now
Mhm.
this is an ancient goddess that we had here that was apparently a cognate with a Hindu deity. And
Mhm.
it's fascinating the reverence as well that we have for, and this sounds daft, but again, stay with me. So in Hinduism, cows are sacred, cattle are sacred, and it's the same in Irish mythology. Like it's always over, there's always rows and wars over cattle and cows, and we never actually farmed our cows for meat either. We would always use it for dairy.
Mm.
And this again, as you're saying, just shows how interconnected we all are because there's so many similarities between Irish culture, ancient Irish culture and Hindu culture. And it's obviously come with the language up through Europe and
Mhm.
across there. I unfortunately I can't speak for the Slavic languages. I'm not really sure about Slavic languages,
Mhm.
but I know that Irish definitely comes from that same um, Indo-European core.
Root. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if we think that the language was traveling, or like people who were bringing this culture and the languages were traveling all this way, so how many like spots they have been to, and how many traces they left. So you never know. You have to really explore
Well,
it.
again, another fascinating one. I am a well of useless knowledge. So
It's
the
not useless as you see. It's really like,
I'm this is my moment. This is my
yeah,
moment to finally just get it all out. So
show her.
Leon, Leon in France, the ancient Roman name for Leon in France was Lugdunum, and it was named after a god that was venerated there by the Celtic people who lived in that region, the Gallic, the Gaulish, the Gauls, and that god was Lu. Lu is one of the most important deities in Irish mythology as well. So again, it
Hmm.
shows you that trail up through.
Hmm.
Then there's Celtic people and Celtic stone circles in Brittany and northern France that are very, very similar to ones that we have here, and some stone circles in Scotland and England as well. So again, it's that thing. We are all connected. We are all one people.
Yes. People, let's
Yeah,
be friends.
let's
Let's stop killing
yeah,
each other.
exactly. I mean, if you look back, just look back through history, and you can see we're all the same. We all want the same thing. At the end of the day, everyone just wants a home and a bed and some food.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that music on Spotify goes viral, and but
Well,
that's
yeah, yeah. I
fine.
mean, yeah. If you can, be
Yeah.
be a real help towards the finances.
So I think it's just the perfect moment to wrap it up, because
No.
it's a good message we sent to
Yeah,
people.
we're all one. We're all connected. Let's all be mates.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you, Tom, again for the
No
second
problem.
time. Now
Hopefully,
I'm
this one
sure.
turned out well.
No, I mean, of course, Zoom never let me down. So yeah, it's gonna be all right. And I will publish it as soon as I can. And people, follow Tom on his social media and go listen to his music. It's worth it. And see you next time. Thank
See ya.
you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And of course, don't forget to leave the comments, to follow our social media, to listen to Tom's album, and subscribe the channel not to miss further episodes, and stay tuned for next guest. Thank you again. See you next time. Bye.